Well, 40 years after the riots at the U.S. Capitol, President Trump is wiping away the criminal charges of more than 1,500 people. That includes nearly 50 Central Florida residents who were charged in connection with that attack.
News 6's Laverne McGee spoke with one of those people who says he is not sorry for what he did.
I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of January 6th. I have no remorse for it. I'm very proud of it.
Nathan Tuck says he got a call from his attorney around 11 o'clock last night that President Donald Trump pardoned him and others for charges stemming from the attack on the U.S. Capitol. It was January 6th of 2021 when some of the supporters of President Trump stormed the Capitol building, some of them trying to stop the certification of President Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 election. Tuck proudly tells News 6 he's a member of the Proud Boys and a former police officer of almost 9 years in Apopka and Longwood. He was facing about 14 months behind bars for his role after pleading guilty to felony and misdemeanor charges.
So I went into the Capitol, participated in a protest that was very, very peaceful. And the cops are the ones that they instigated the entire thing. I just protested and entered the Capitol, a building that I've paid for my entire life through my taxes, so I'm not sorry.
According to the United States Attorney's Office, Nathaniel Tuck was the sole member of his co-defendants who successfully pushed his way past a line of multiple Capitol police officers, making physical contact with at least one officer as he did so. And he spent most of the next hour inside the Capitol building, where he berated officers, shouting at them and calling them communists. Later, he sent a text to his father saying, quote, "Politics won't save us. Violence is the only way we will win." His father, Kevin Tuck, was with him that day and also charged. He was an officer with the Windermere Police Department and also pleaded guilty for his role in the 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. He was sentenced to 6 months in prison and had yet to start his sentence. Last night, Nathan celebrated with fellow Proud Boy members.
We just drank and had a good time last night. Yeah, we picked up a lot of guys from prison last night.
Who were also pardoned?
Yeah, they got pardoned. We picked them up.
There were about 45 local arrests made in connection with January 6th. 3 Central Floridians were charged with some of the most serious crimes. Joseph Biggs, a Proud Boy from Ormond Beach, and Kelly Meggs, an Oath Keeper from Dunellen, were both convicted of seditious conspiracy. And Kenneth Harrelson, an Oath Keeper from Titusville, was convicted of lesser charges and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. All 3 have now been released. What do you say to people across the country, around the world, who still are concerned or think that this was something that was not democratic and that was something that was considered a bad thing?
I would tell them, get over it. I can care less what you think. That's what I would say.
And what do you think about President Trump now?
I'm very happy. Obviously, I'm very happy that he pardoned me, and thank you, President Trump.
Hey, I want to welcome everybody to another episode of You and the Law podcast. I am one of the hosts of the show, Virgil Green, and as always, I got to introduce the brother who sits next to me every Thursday afternoon, who goes by the name, and it is known worldwide by the name of Chief Swaggy One, the ultimate beast.
What's going on, man?
Not a whole lot, brother. How you?
All right,
how's
everybody doing? Oh,
Man, it is great to get together again to have another informative podcast. And tonight we're going to be talking about. Let me pull this here up. We're going to be talking about presidential pardons sending the wrong message. And Keith, when I found that news clip, I said, this is something we've got to play tonight, because it was very disturbing to know that 2 former police officers took part in assaulting other police officers and committed other criminal acts. And he acted as if he had never been a police officer before. But we're also going to be talking about the letter, the joint statement from the IACP and the FOP, which has raised some questions and condemned these pardons that the incoming president has done. And for those who do not know, the IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Keith, is one of the largest police organizations beside the FOP, but both organizations have a lot of political influence on Capitol Hill. And I think this was the first time I've seen a joint statement come from both associations.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said before, good evening, everyone. It is, yeah. This past week has been interesting as it
Yeah, the past
relates.
couple of days. Yeah.
Yeah, especially as it relates to presidential pardons. And when we talk about presidential pardons, we're talking about the pardons that Joe Biden made
Biden
as he was
did.
leaving,
Yeah.
and the pardons that Donald Trump has made since he's been in office. And we understand that there are going to be those pardons. We understand that on the state level, each year, or especially at the end of their terms, governors do that on state charges, and understand on federal charges that the presidents will do that. I mean, it's not uncommon to have over 1,000 people pardoned. And there have been pardons when there has been times when people have gone to prison for what appears to be for crimes that were not violent, and so their sentences have been pardoned, have been commuted, or whatever. But this is the first time that I remember since being old enough to vote, or in my lifetime, that there have been pardons when it comes to those who have committed murders, or who have murdered, or who have seriously injured law enforcement officers. Joe Biden pardoned a gentleman that was convicted of killing 2 FBI agents back in 1980, I believe, maybe a little bit farther than that. And his sentence was commuted.
Mm-hmm.
He's been in prison. Well, it's been 50 years. He served 50, so it had to be in the 70s, late 60s or 70s.
Yeah, well, it was in the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, he was pardoned, and he killed 2 FBI agents. Then Donald Trump came in and pardoned all of the January 6th those who had been convicted regarding January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
In that, there were numerous individuals who had actively assaulted police officers. As you know, there were police officers who are now permanently disabled. There were police officers who were severely injured. There's one who died of a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
They were pulled out of the Capitol, and they were assaulted. They were cursed. They were called. There were racial slurs. They were beaten with flagpoles. I believe maybe one officer who died of a stroke or was seriously injured was hit with a fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
This has all been proven, and
those were proven in a court of law.
Those were proven, and there were police officers involved in this, as we just saw, police officers that were suspected and convicted of this. But at the end of the day, you have violent criminals who have attacked law enforcement, who have been released from prison. That didn't sit well. And like you said, for the very first time, an unprecedented statement that came from the International Association of Chiefs of Police, like you said, and the Fraternal Order of Police. I've never seen that. And basically condemning the actions of both presidents. So this was not a partisan situation. This was a bipartisan
statement
of saying that they disagree with both. And
Mm-hmm.
and you're right. You have to be concerned with the fact that you have those who have committed these violent crimes that have been released, that have been pardoned. You're absolutely right. We have a really good friend, Virgil, that I remember when this occurred, and he basically spoke out about his concern regarding the actions of police officers who were involved, and how police officers, we take an oath, and how police officers were involved in the assault on other officers, and and things like that. And there were those that work for this police department's in Norman, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
They chastised him and made complaints about him, and said that there was nothing, they didn't see anything wrong with what happened. They were just
What happened?
right. But to have these individuals released from jail, that is just unheard of and very, 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 very disappointing.
Yeah, Keith.
And it's Versus it's interesting that you can't justify um, releasing people who have committed such violent crimes. And I think that's what everybody's concerned about, that you pardon individuals who have taken the lives of those who are sworn to protect. It doesn't matter what you feel about law enforcement. It doesn't matter, the fact of the matter is, Virgil, and to the listeners, it makes those family members, okay? It makes those family members feel that their loved ones have been disrespected, forgotten, and that their service was taken in vain.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Keith, there was several officers who were seriously injured, got lifelong injuries. One lost his life days after this insurrection, and the FOP endorsed Donald Trump. Now they are in a joint statement with the IACP with their concerns about both presidents who have pardoned these people. And that statement is that individuals who commit these acts against peace officers should uh, fill out their prison sentence. And but the politics is in the middle of this here. And I think what kind of message is this sending to Americans, that you can go and you can commit some of the most serious crimes, but you can get pardoned and as if it never happened. And so I just wonder, how is this going to, once this it's already settled in, but how is this going to move things forward with everybody looking at the things that happened to these officers and the fact that you got all these people who are being released from prison. And Keith, I think there are some people who are basically saying, I don't want a pardon, but there's a lot of people who are saying, hey, I'll take the pardon.
Yeah, it's just we have Dr. Tharp, who says, what does it say about our profession when current officers from the top law enforcement officers down to the newest hired officers that publicly support the pardons?
That's a concern.
It doesn't say a lot about our profession to the point that you allow your personal, because this is the deal. Let me just make this very clear, because you and I talked about this. We talked about it with our executive director and producer. I'm sorry. And the one thing that I want to make sure everybody understands, we're not talking politics here. We're not talking, because, as you know, this was bipartisan. You had two presidents from two different parties who pardoned those individuals who have murdered or seriously hurt or maimed law enforcement officers in the course of their duties. Mm-hmm. And they were pardoned. They received pardons. And it doesn't matter. Let me just also say this. It would not have mattered if these individuals were involved in the murder of a police officer doesn't matter what day, what year. The fact of the matter is we talk about how officers die. We remember them so they would not have died in vain. We talk about how we support their families. We talk about that, we stand behind them. They take an oath to protect those who aren't able to protect themselves. They go to work each and every day, not knowing if they're going to come home. We talk about that. We talk about the brave men and women, and that we would not have, they provide the peace and the safety that we need. But then you honor those individuals. And this is what the FOP and the IACP are saying, and others are saying. You honor these individuals by letting individuals who have murdered seriously hurt, disrespected, have bragged about the actions they take. You give them pardons and
Yeah.
they walk away. So what does that say to those families?
And, yeah, yeah. And then you got, the guy in the interview, the former officer who said he doesn't
Doesn't
regret
regret a
anything.
thing.
He doesn't regret it. And he's somebody who took the oath at one point to serve and protect his community, but he doesn't regret anything. And Keith, and I think, as we're sitting here and we're talking, having this conversation about tonight's topic, which is presidential pardon sending the wrong message, what kind of message is this going to send here in a couple of months in May when we have National Law Enforcement Week, where so many people from officers from around the country, we all go to DC. There's the Law Enforcement Memorial Wall. Every president has been involved in that and gives a speech to officers and their families. I wonder how that is going to impact that law enforcement week because of what just happened, because the IACP and the FOP are heavily involved in that event. I don't know what is your thoughts
I
are
don't know. It's
about
going to
that.
be really interesting. And there's going to probably be. I'm very comfortable in saying, as we speak, there's been some contacts in order to have some meetings between those two organizations and the White House, and I'm sure President Biden's team has been contacted, and people want responses, and we haven't gotten responses from any
Well, they
from any of the two presidents regarding, especially related to uh, the pardons related to law enforcement deaths or injuries. And so I think that's
yeah.
probably some of the questions that have to, before we can move forward, or before May Police Memorial, those are going to be some of the questions that are going to have to be answered, because you're absolutely right. Those two organizations are the largest law enforcement agencies, and all the law enforcement agencies have come out and said something. National
But
Black law
noble,
enforcement
yeah.
officers have said the exact same thing. It has been they've been very vocal regarding the disappointment of the actions of the previous president and the current administration.
Yeah. Well, Keith, and I want first of all, I want to say thanks to those who are tuning in on our YouTube page, our Facebook and LinkedIn. Please share your comments in the chat. We'll definitely get to them. One of the comments is from William. He states that they have placed individuals who have actually testified in danger. I think that's missing, Keith. That you got a lot of people. These individuals who are in prison, they're getting out, and they feel more powerful in that this president gave them this pardon, and no matter what they do, he's going to, in their minds, he's going to protect them. And I've already seen where one individual who received a pardon has already been rearrested for felony gun charges. So again, the message that it is sending to officers and to the public is not a. This is the first time we've ever been in this type of a situation in this country, where you've got some people who normally are very supportive of a presidential who's that commander in chief who's in office, but this is really going to divide uh, a lot of people.
It is. It's just to see how this passes, and then I think it doesn't help recruiting either. When it comes to
Oh no, that's
the
another
problems that
aspect
we're
of it. Yeah.
having in recruiting, what messages does that send?
Our our Keith, what is that? The message that is sending to those who are, say, maybe a year or two from retirement. They can retire now, but they may say, "Well, hey, I've got another 3 or 4 years." What is that? Are they rethinking and saying, "Hey, I think it's just gone ahead and time for me go ahead and
Well,
just
Virgil,
retire, because
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking that this is going to have a ripple effect, and I don't think none of that was considered when these presidential pardons were given. Now, and I'm not, and I don't want to dismiss what Biden did. The person that Biden pardoned has been in prison for 51 years. The person, these individuals that Trump pardoned,
No,
some of them had not even started to
it
serve
doesn't. It doesn't.
their
It doesn't
prison
matter
term.
the tenure, uh, Virgil. It
No, it
doesn't.
doesn't matter
So
the
it
tenure,
does.
but
It
I'm just,
doesn't matter.
yeah.
It doesn't matter the tenure. It doesn't matter anything other than the fact that you have two presidents who pardon individuals who have killed law enforcement. So it doesn't. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter. It's
yeah.
that's what's the concern of law enforcement as we speak today. That that police murderers and those who remain police officers.
If it was 51 years ago, yeah, it still
It would
matters.
not have mattered because you know what? Those families, some members of those families of that officer who was killed, those officers who were killed 50 years ago are still alive, and they're having to, and
Yeah.
they having to. Um, it's it's crazy. It is unfathomable of why this happened.
So I want to get to a comment that just got put in the chat from Brent on LinkedIn. He says, "I hope that I'm not mistaken, but Biden commuted the sentence, but did pardon the individual. I believe he should have stayed in prison, even though he was 80 years old. However, Trump gave pardons, which gives these people clean records, which makes political violence acceptable, and that is totally wrong, regardless of the political parties. And law enforcement is stuck in the middle. I mean, you're right, Dr. Thorpe. It is law enforcement is stuck in the middle, and you've got what's disturbing is the fact that first video clip I just showed is that you got somebody who doesn't regret, and he wore the badge, but he does not regret his action against other police officers. And he's not alone. There are many others who from around the country who were active or retired law enforcement who assaulted other law enforcement
Yeah,
officers.
and it doesn't matter whether you believe or not that you had the right to do that. But the fact that you actively, intentionally, recklessly hurt individuals, anyone. But we're talking about those. You're a police officer. You know what challenges we have. You've gone
Yeah.
to, you've attended funerals. You've seen the tears. You've seen the heartache. You've seen families who've never gotten over it. Kids who are growing up without their parents, or mothers and fathers growing up without sons and daughters, and so on and so on. Communities that have been forever scarred. I mean, I came from a community that had never lost an officer, lost one. That's something that'll never, that community will never forget. I can't forget it. And so those are the things that it comes up, and that you have to be concerned about. And you have to think. I understand. We talked earlier. I understand pardons. I understand being, commuted. But I think that comes to, there should be some limitations on that when it comes to, because now I don't think there's not a state that there's no states, I think, that I think all the states either life in prison without parole or death for killing a law enforcement officer, to the point it's even got to that point with federal agencies, as far as federal prison, life without parole, and so to send that message that you will not take the life of anyone who's serving as a police officer. So it has been, and let me just say this: I think what makes it so unique with the FOP and IACP those groups have fought for that, for longer term life without parole or death penalty for individuals who do kill law enforcement officers. I think that's where you see an uproar. There's been that fight. There's been that discussion that we support you, from different administrations, and it does appear, that organizations and law enforcement officers feel some kind of way about it. And like I said, nobody gets a walk in this discussion. So it doesn't matter. Like I said, this is a bipartisan issue. No one gets a walk in some, there's going to have to be some very thorough explanations. If either one decides that they feel they need to give a explanation, but I don't understand it. And it was very shocking to me, left me speechless.
Yeah. Well, Keith, there was some, and maybe those who are listening, maybe even Dr. Thorpe on LinkedIn, but I don't believe pardons have ever been challenged that gets up to the Supreme Court. So presidential pardons, I believe they can be, but I don't believe a presidential pardon has got to the level of where the Supreme Court it's taken up to the Supreme Court because of the powers that the president has. That there are no other parts of the judicial branch that can say to the president, "You cannot pardon this person or that group or that person."
No, it's the president.
I think there were some concerns.
Executive rights.
Yeah,
it's an executive right of that office, and I
think this is going to raise some questions by both. What does either a Democrat or a Republican president? How can you go too far?
Well, I think Dr. Tharp brings it up. We talk about commuting and we talk about pardons. We understand that. Yeah, the gentleman that's 80 years old sentence was commuted. Don't agree with that either. Don't agree with any. The only way that I agree with any type of modification of sentencing, if there's beyond a reasonable doubt that the conviction was wrong, the evidence proving people held back information that clearly clears someone, these crimes. But that wasn't the case in these situations. It was. We made a decision to do that. That's what's concerning, I think.
Yeah. Well, Keith, I got to you and to those who were watching and listening on YouTube and Facebook. The president also pardoned 2 DC police officers who killed a DC resident, a black male, and I will say this: they covered up his death. And I want to show this here clip because he's going to say,
well, wait a minute, V. Let's make sure that we get the facts right. The fact of the matter is they committed an unauthorized pursuit.
Correct.
And this person tragically died
as a result of
which there was, we can't ever prove any intent. And should they have been? Absolutely.
But they were found. But they were found during the court.
Right.
Guilty.
Right. They were.
Yeah.
But they had not reported to prison yet, which I'm not justifying what they did. But I mean, we're
yeah, and I think the reason that I bring this up and wanted to share this is that there were other people who were pardoned, not just the people in the insurrection, but again, as we talk about the presidential pardon sending the wrong message, what kind of message is this sending to this man's family and all these other families. So I want to show this clip, and on the other side of this, we will get to some other comments in the chat and talk about this here on the other side.
Breaking just moments ago, we are learning that one of those MPD officers we just talked about has been pardoned by President Trump. Andrew Zabowski and Terrence Sutton were both convicted in the death of Karen Hilton Brown back in 2020. Now, Zabowski was just pardoned. We are still waiting to learn about Sutton. Our 7 News' Felicia Ashley is live in Northwest tonight because, Felicia, you spoke to Brown's partner and her outrage about these developments.
That's right, and I actually spoke with her earlier today, and at that time, President Donald Trump said he had plans to pardon both officers. I literally just texted her just a moment ago and broke the news to her that one of the officers was officially pardoned, and she said that she is in complete shock. I'm actually standing in the alley. This is the alley where the 2 officers chased Karan. This is the spot where he ended up getting hit by an incoming car. And what prosecutors say they did after is what got them in trouble. Prosecutors say that both officers tried to cover this up. Not only did they tell that driver to go away, they never took witness statements or reported it. This is 20-year-old Karan Hilton Brown with his baby girl. She turned 3 months old the day he died.
She wanted to give her ice cream so bad. I was gonna get a little taste of it. But yeah, no, that was the conversation. He was supposed to come back to us.
He didn't. And take a look at why. This is body camera video. MPD Officer Terrence Sutton and Lieutenant Andrew Zabowski were sentenced after prosecutors claimed they illegally chased Brown. In trial, the officer said they chased him because he was riding on the sidewalk without a helmet.
To only have 4 to 5 years and have yet to even serve one inside of a jail is kind of absurd. I mean, like, I don't get it.
Well, we're looking at 2 police officers, actually, that Washington police officers who went after an illegal, and things happened and they ended up putting them in jail. We got to give them a break.
We learned he was referring to Sutton and Zabowski. When you heard President Donald Trump refer to Karan as an illegal.
Right. I kind of thought it was comical, honestly, because I don't know who told him that. I don't know where he got that from. I don't know if it's because he was on a moped.
He wasn't even moving, he was looking for his keys. And then they harassed him, and Judge Friedman said that he had the right to flee.
Davis Schertz represents Karan's family.
What they're doing is they have renegade officers like Officer Sutton, who has a reputation for chasing people, for taking drugs and money from the guys that he has arrested. And we have affidavits to that effect.
Just showing how much power the police have.
Now, I reached out to the White House press office to ask them where President Donald Trump got the claim that Karan was an alleged illegal, which is not true. So, of course, when we get the latest updates, we will give that to you. We're also still waiting for the developments when it comes to Officer Sutton. So as soon as we get that information, we'll provide that to you as well. But for now, we are reporting live in
So here's another person, 2 other officers who were pardoned in this same group of people who were pardoned. Now, I know you're not going to agree with that assessment of it, but we're talking about presidential pardons and sending the wrong message. And I think for me, if we're talking about, as we talk about through this here, how is that these pardons of those who were involved in the insurrection different from the death of an officer who's lost his life, but from an individuals who covered up the death of this young man, but out of the blue, nobody knows why these individuals were picked to be pardoned. And again, I think for me, it's all about the message. What message is this sending to everybody?
I don't know, Bert.
You know, is it sending a message that it's okay to do this? It's okay for these people to be pardoned, but we're also pardoning officers who took part in another person's or covered up another person's death. And you got these families who are trying to wonder. At the end of the day, Keith, this is all about the families. Everybody can agree to disagree on what Biden did, what the incoming president did, but what is the message to the families? Is it that the families don't have a voice in this here at all?
Well, I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know.
I think, and again, it is. I think that, and I said this earlier. This is going to cause a lot of uh, much more division than what has already been there. And I was listening to this other officer who lost his life, who was a Capitol officer. His name was Sicknick, and he was brutally beaten by these individuals, and it's almost as if his life didn't matter because I'm doing this because these people either served their time or didn't serve their time, but this is what I'm going to do. So does that mean that person's signet, that officer's life didn't matter at the end of the day? And does that mean that the 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 pardon that Biden did on the gentleman who was in his 80 years old who killed two FBI agents, that FBI agent's life didn't matter?
No, I don't think it. I don't think that's going to be a question that we can't answer. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't think it'll ever be understood. But what I do know is that it sends the wrong message to those million plus officers throughout that's within the United States. It sends a message, and I think that the discons the anger and the frustration was spoke volumes in that
statement.
In that joint statement that was made. Do you have that joint statement?
Yeah, Keith, I have it, but it's going to be, the wording is going to be really small. But what I will do, and I will read this because I'm pretty sure a lot of people have not seen this here statement, but putting it up on the screen is going to be real hard for people to read it. So give me a second and to find this here and to share it.
But the statement, until you do that, the statement is very, very strong. It's very, very strong. It's a very strong message regarding the disappointment.
Yeah. So Keith, so I got the statement. You want me to read it in this entirety or just kind of skim through it?
I would skim through it, so I think everybody would get the audience would get the message.
So the letter starts out by that the International Association of Chiefs of Police, IACP, and the Fraternal Order of Police have had a long-standing and positive relationship with both President Trump and President Biden, and have greatly appreciated their support of policing profession. However, the IACP and the FOP are deeply discouraged by the recent pardons and commutations granted by both the Biden and Trump administration to individuals convicted of killing or assaulting law enforcement officers. The IACP and the FOP firmly believe that those convicted of such crimes should serve their full sentences. Crimes against law enforcement are not just attacks on individuals or public safety, they are attacks on society and undermine the rule of law. Allowing those convicted of those crimes to be released early diminish the accountability and devalues the sacrifices made by courageous law enforcement officers and their families. When perpetrators of crimes, especially serious crimes are not held fully accountable, it sends a dangerous message that the consequences for attacking law enforcement are not severe, potentially emboldening others to commit similar acts of violence. The IACP and the FOP call on policymakers, judicial authorities, and community leaders to ensure that justice is upheld by enforcing full sentencing, especially in cases involving violence against law enforcement. This approach reaffirms our commitment to the rule of law, public safety, and the protection of those who risk their lives for our communities. So it was not a very long statement, but it was a very direct statement from both the IACP and the FOP for those two associations to come together to put out that very direct message how they feel and how their members feel. Because as you remember, I mean, we are both members. Well, we're both members of the IACP, not the FOP, but you would have to think that the FOP, with so many members, that this was something that went through. This gave a lot. There was a lot of thought put into this here before it was publicly released.
They normally, the FOP normally doesn't, once they make a statement or throw their support behind something, they normally stick with that. And this sent a clear message that, for both administrations that, hey, your law enforcement officers are watching and they're listening. You say one thing and you do something else. It is, like I said, and Dr. Thorpe has said, we have to get answers of why.
Yeah.
We have to, especially the part regarding the officers, those who injured officers, those who murdered officers, why they received leniency. Man, I'll tell you, it's just disheartening. This has been a pretty hard week when it comes to this, to this topic. And then, Virgil, and to the audience, and then you go on the Officer Down Memorial page, and we had another officer recently killed. You think about the officers who went into the school yesterday, who have gone into these schools. And the other day, yesterday or today, 7 officers were shot in an incident. And, so you think about, that officers, that are going to scenes of calls and things like that, and they're injured, and some of them are injured to the point that they have to medically retire, or they're only able to do desk duties, or it affects their families, and they turn to alcohol and other things to to help them cope, and you think about that, and the suicide rate when it comes to police has increased each year. We know that officers they're leaving in droves, whether it's retirement, whether it's not. We know that there's officers who are leaving while they're in the academy. We know there are officers who are leaving, and we had this talk back in 2019 when officers, when we saw this over the since about 2016, we saw this decline in recruiting.
Definitely, and I don't see how the death of George Floyd was involved with that. But even after the death of George Floyd, you saw a mass exodus of people leaving law enforcement.
The reason why is because people think, people thought, and they still think, officers still think that there's a lack of disrespect. That there's disrespect for the profession. And so we're not appreciated. And Virgil, the thing that, you and I started back, 30 plus years ago, and, we weren't making a lot of money. and we loved our job. We went through a lot of stuff, saw a lot of things that were very tragic, things that, that we'll never forget, but we stayed. And now the money's good. I mean, the average salary in certain areas, officers are starting at $80-some thousand. Within 5 years, they're six figures. So the money's there. The retirement's there. The benefits are there. It's the appreciation, a lack of appreciation that officers feel that they're encountering. And so this doesn't help. And I don't know if will we ever get over this. I tell you, we take 20 steps forward and we get knocked back 5 miles. It's interesting to hear and to see what's going to happen with the fallout from this.
It is, and again, I just kind of go back to what I said, just a little while ago, is just the families, how the message that this is sending to not just the law enforcement community, but to the families and to the public, because as the IACP stated that, is this going to give individuals who feel like they have a past to commit violent acts against police officers, and that does this set a precedent that, well, hey, these other individuals got pardoned, so why should I receive any sentence even though I've been convicted of a crime for assaulting a police officer?
Right.
What is that going to do?
I mean, can you just imagine?
But let me say this, Keith, and I think this was the thing, and these individuals committed crimes on federal at the Capitol, right? Now, does he have that power to pardon individuals who commit state crimes?
That's the governor. The governor has that right.
The governor has the right, but did the other situation in DC make it different because DC is what? How does DC look?
I see the question you're asking. I see what you're saying, because I see what you're saying. I don't know that. I don't know that answer. I'm familiar with governors'
pardons
on state laws. Don't know how DC works. I know DC is its own. I don't know. I don't know if those officers are part of those. I don't know. I don't know how that works and how that happened.
Yeah, and I think that's why it came out of nowhere, and those did, but these other individuals were all of those went through federal court. They were tried and convicted in federal courts around.
Oh, you know what, Virgil? The reason why it was federal charges. It was federal charges.
Oh, was it? Okay.
That is what it was. It was federal charges. Yeah.
Okay. Because I didn't think a president could just arbitrarily pardon somebody in a state.
They were federal charges. They were waiting to report to federal prison on federal charges. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, hey, Keith, I want to remind those who are just now tuning into the podcast that tonight's topic, we're talking about the presidential pardon sending the wrong message. The IACP and the FOP came out with a very strong message to both administrations that they did not like the pardons that the outgoing president did, nor the incoming president did. And, I think we're still going to be asking these questions in the days, weeks, and months, and even years to come. What kind of messages is sending, and what is the impact? And I think the biggest thing, what is going to be the impact of this here? What is this going to have on society and how people are going to look at law enforcement, and how are those in law enforcement going to feel that their lives matter or don't matter?
Yeah.
Getting to a comment in the chat that Dr. Thorpe just put in, he said the leader of the Oath Keeper was visiting the Capitol Hill today. I don't know if that's a question, Dr. Thorpe, or is that something that was put out there?
No,
That
he's. I think he's basically saying, isn't that a coincidence? I think that's what he's referring.
okay, all
Yeah,
right, all right.
Dr. Thorpe, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that's what you're. Isn't that a coincidence?
Yeah, the leader of the Oath Keep was visiting the Hill today. Is that something? Yeah, if that's that, again, it's just the whole message of this, Keith.
Right.
What is the message? And it's the wrong message that we're sending to not just to people in America. What is that message sending to people outside of around the world
I don't
about
know.
what is going on?
Don't know. And like I said, man, it's beyond political. We're not political. We're bipartisan on this. You know, our main focus is we stay strictly bipartisan. We see it as, because I think that you can't always agree with either side. So we stay in the middle.
Yeah.
We say, but this is something that has affected both administrations. The actions have affected both administrations.
You can't justify.
Well, we don't sometimes think when we do things, man, we don't think about the domino effect. We don't think about the collateral damage. And I mentioned it earlier, man. It comes down to the fact of the matter is slap in the face. Those officers in DC have been under they have been through so much.
Well, Keith,
through so much, man.
Yeah. Well, Keith, just as I was preparing for the show and going back, looking at some of the video, some of the footage, and some of the things that's happened, and I think I shared with you this in a text message that one of these individuals, there was explosive devices that were thrown at these Capitol officers, and I want to say somewhere around 22 to 25 of them were injured from those explosive devices that were thrown at them.
Yeah.
I don't think we fully know the amount of violence that took place that day.
Yeah.
We've heard the stories, but just hearing that these individuals threw explosive devices and there was all other types of weapons that was used, the men and women of the Capitol Police went through a lot.
They went through hell.
They went through hell. Yeah, you're right.
They went through hell that day. And I was reading an article. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the officer who has the tattoos.
The one that you kind of see on. Yeah,
you see all the time, and he was telling a story about how his mother, who's 76 years old, was receiving death threats. And
why?
So if that, and that's why I was talking about the collateral damage. Someone who was not there, your mother, your loved one's not there, and they're having to receive these threats. And just imagine, as I said earlier, the two FBI agents from the 1970s who were killed, their family, the slap in the face, the lack of the show of disrespect that they feel. And so it's not just about those individual officers. And I think when you read the IACP and FOP's letter, I think it expresses that. I definitely know it expresses that in the Noble letter. And so, a lot of times we don't agree with certain organizations, and we don't, but I think this is, I was very, 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 very impressed with the letter that was written. I think from the two largest law enforcement agencies in the world, Law enforcement. I'm sorry, law enforcement organization.
Association, organization. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And again, these are organizations that have had a very long positive uh, uh, partnership with both Democrat and Republican presidents. And again, it puts these associations or organizations in a position as to what are our values, what are we standing on, and
Right.
this here has made individuals who have supported both Republican and Democrat presidents. It's almost kind of like, have you all not heard what we've been talking about over these administrations, Democrat or Republican, that the members that we represent, these are the things that need to be in place to protect them, because they're serving and protecting in their communities. So how do you do something like this here? Because it's going to have an impact. And Dr. Thorpe put in the chat is that he wondered if the officers who are working the Capitol, who were working the Capitol, 4 years ago, did that trigger them seeing this individual?
Yeah, today, and like I said, you'll never know the long lasting effect. I mean, we can only speculate, but we don't know until you actually talk to someone. But I would tell you, I'll say this again, man. My heart goes out to Metro DC police, because they've been through so much. Man.
Yeah.
I mean, they had an officer about a month or two ago that was shot, and was clearing a weapon after
Clearing the weapon that we talked about. Yeah.
and he and was accidental discharge and died. And there's been others. I mean, they've lost officers recently to cancer and other things. So they have really been hit hard the last 3 or 4 years. And internally and externally. And so, like I say, man, my hat goes off to them. But man, it looks like we this topic we could probably go on, but we've reached the end of the show.
Yeah, man. And Keith, before we end tonight's podcast, I want to something we were going to talk about, but we chose to talk about presidential pardon, sending the wrong message. But this past weekend was the ML King holiday weekend on Monday. A lot of events took place on Saturday, over the weekend. And I think, I wonder, what would a Dr. Martin Luther King, if he was alive, he would be 96 years old. What would Dr. Martin Luther King say?
I will tell you.
And I know we don't know because this was a man who gave his life to making sure that justice was fair and equal. And what are we seeing some 50 something years after the passage of the Civil Rights Bill? It would be interesting to hear what his words would be about this here.
I think his children have, his surviving children have spoken volumes and have relayed to the nation and to the world what they believe their father would have thought.
Yeah. Well, hey, Keith, we got a good comment from Dr. Thorpe in the chat that it was a good conversation, and definitely want to thank him for tuning in and joining this this topic as we talked about presidential pardons, sending the wrong message. But make sure that you tune in next Thursday for which is definitely going to be another informative topic that we're going to have on the podcast. I think I'm gonna let my host pick out the topic.
You're gonna let me pick out a topic, okay? Well, I tell you this one thing I would like the audience to do. Hey, if you have something you'd like us to talk about, please drop us a line.
Please do.
The topic we welcome that the opportunity to talk about something that you would find interesting. So please do that.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Well, hey, brother, it's been another great podcast, and I know you got to jump off and get to some other things, and we will get together and do this all over again next Thursday right here on You and the Law podcast.
Good night, everyone.